This is Nick, you're watching the Great Intentions podcast. Thanks for clicking. Now for our feature presentation. All of us see that the traditional ideal of the lifelong monogamous relationship is breaking down. And that's left us with two incorrect impulses on how to fix it. The right and the left impulse. Let me tell you why I think they're both wrong, while also providing no solutions on how to fix it. First off, why they're breaking down in the first place. Human behavior and culture is rooted in our constantly shifting environment. If we want to understand why people today are choosing to be eternally promiscuously single, we should contrast the environments of the modern man with his predecessors. Society is very old. It's been 2,000-ish years since we crucified Jesus, but we only need to look back less than 100 to see the tectonic shift in our lifestyles. In the 1930s, people lived shorter lives. The world was warring. Polio and syphilis were ravaging populations. There was famine, poverty, massive genocide. The world was a much tougher place. There were also a lot less people and no internet. They lived in scarcity. From this image, the reasons for a more monogamous society are overtly clear. People got married young because there was less life to live, and birthing children at older ages became more and more dangerous. People had a lot of children because early childhood death was much more common, and parents generally needed children to help work their farms and earn for the family. This is because families were impoverished, and not 2024 impoverished. It wasn't just that their iPhones weren't the newest, or they couldn't afford Roku TVs. They were worried about heat and food. STDs like syphilis were rampant, so people weren't promiscuous. And there wasn't a full dictionary of men and women on the internet for people to sit on their couch and choose from, so your options were more limited, which meant people were more apt to try to make relationships work than just pressing the eject button. If we compare this to our modern situation, we see that many of these hardships have been completely eradicated. We live long lives. Early childhood death is minimal. Most of us haven't even seen a farm. STDs aren't as lethal, and we have ways to mitigate them. Also, we have an abundance of people at our fingertips waiting for us on dating apps. In the modern era, because free enterprise has exponentially minimized our external struggles, most of us have much more time to focus on our own gratification. It's just a product of our environment. Mental illness has replaced the traditional physical illness. Instead of harvesting food or working coal mines, we're dealing with our boredom. Our issue is the absence of struggle. Our issue is abundance, not scarcity. With our long lives and seemingly infinite options, there simply are not many external pressures to enter long-term monogamous relationships or have children. However, there's a hidden cost. We're not machines. We are organic beings with biological triggers and functions. We have strong instincts to procreate, to protect and raise children. And we have a biological feeling of emptiness when we neglect that duty. There's not enough external pressure for us to give up our decadent, responsibility-free lifestyle, but the lack of that biological purpose leaves us psychologically incomplete. We all might know that rationally we would be fulfilled by a long-term monogamous relationship, but we live in a struggle-free society that's in turn self-obsessed. When problems arise, we don't have enough at stake to correct them. We're not overly worried about time or options. We have both in abundance. When things get difficult, we don't have enough incentive to fix them. Worse than that, we know that the person on the other side of the relationship has the same incentive structure as us. What's stopping them from leaving the relationship when it gets tough? It seems unsafe to invest too much into one person because that one person could just as easily get up and leave. Women don't need men to provide for them like they used to. The volatility of the modern relationship has the potential to compromise our worry-free existence upon its failure, so it's too dangerous. And so the monogamy of the past is becoming alien to us, and our two impulses want us to pretend two different things. Starting with the impulse of the left. The impulse of the left is to pretend away away the fulfillment that comes with monogamy and having children. This requires us to imagine ourselves as disconnected from our biological reality. It's not said in an overt way, but this attitude is implied. It's not that you can't be monogamous or that you can't have children. It's just that these are only valuable insofar as any other relationship style or activity is valuable. People who subscribe to this impulse aren't going to tell you not to have kids. Well, some of them are, but the majority will just act as though having kids or getting married is no different than any other worldly pursuit, like having a really good career or volunteering at the soup kitchen. This impulse fails to recognize that the procreative nature of the animal kingdom is in the deepest chambers of the human mind. It cannot be replaced by worldly pursuits, as noble as they might be. Consider how fundamental procreation and children's development is to a species' survival. Also consider how much music, TV, books, and other media focus on monogamous romance. It sometimes feels like it's all we talk about. That's how deeply rooted it is. And it can't be replaced by more sex, more success, or more wealth. The left impulse gaslights you into thinking that this biological function can be completely filled or suppressed by alternatives. This thinking is attractive because it can resemble the gambler's fallacy. Maybe after 100K, maybe after 200K, maybe after 1 million, after 10 hookups, after 30 hookups, 100 hookups, I'll be happy. I mentioned the soup kitchen, which isn't to say donating your time isn't good. It's just to say that it can't replace the second most important function of organic life behind eating. And of course, there exist people who cannot have children, and it would minimize this struggle to suggest they aren't missing out on much. Their existence doesn't compromise the argument. Now for the right impulse. But not right as in right, but right as in the opposite of left. The right impulse is not to pretend away our biology. Instead, it pretends away the effects of our environment. The right impulse intuitively sees the benefits of struggle in creating deep connections between humans, but denies or downplays the reality that our ability to undertake struggle is contingent on our present environment. You might hear people of this persuasion tell you to marry early, to have kids early, to do this all before you're well established financially. The intuition behind this advice is that you can create artificial struggle to simulate a time period where these things were more necessary, thereby creating a stronger relationship. Religion is a tool of this impulse, enforcing these struggles based on objective moral law. So instead of promiscuity being negative because of STDs and fatherless children, it becomes inherently negative regardless of its effects. You can still believe promiscuity is negative without adhering to religion, but you can also acknowledge that it's safer and less damaging than it would have been 100 years ago. The right impulse would have you incur needless struggle upon yourself in order to strengthen your relations. It would also have you adhere to moral laws whose empirical reasoning may seem weak in the modern age. For instance, divorce is a touchy subject for Christians. Some believe it's okay, and some believe it's impossible. But if you see a friend who was divorced and has been happily remarried for 30 years, all while remaining Christian, it might strike you odd that in the eyes of God, that person is supposedly committing adultery and is still married to his or her ex. It just seems empirically falsifiable. Many people would have you believe that older generations were more religious and had more moral fortitude simply because they were better humans, which in some part is true, but it leaves out the unavoidable understanding that these people's religious intuitions were more empirically justifiable. The moral traditions aligned with the visible consequences. Divorce caused poverty for women, and promiscuity created lethal disease. These examples today still have clear negative side effects, but it's inarguable that they were more severe in the past. So nowadays, religious people are expected to restrain themselves more by imagination and rational arguments rooted in faith traditions than what they see around them. The issue is, this is not sustainable, especially as the believability of faith traditions weaken. We can certainly discipline ourselves, but we cannot coerce ourselves. Though I would agree that getting married early and having kids does promote mutual struggle, which in turn promotes deep connection, I would disagree that the average person could coerce themselves into the belief that that arrangement is rational and necessary. Some people might be able to, but it won't work at scale. Thanks for watching my video. My name's Nick, and I make lots of different types of content surrounding the absurdity of life in the modern age. Generally, they're more funny than this one. If you care about my happiness, you'll leave this video a like and you'll comment that my voice is sexy.